Speak No Evil, again, as I mentioned, a brand new psychological horror film, is actually a remake of a film that came out a couple of years ago, which was a 2022 Danish movie, also entitled Speak No Evil. And James Watkins, who is the director of this brand new version, decided to adapt that original film that came out just a couple of years ago. Again, it's a foreign international film, Danish movie, and decided to adapt it for American audiences and put it out. And he obviously got a pretty well-known star in James McAvoy to attach to it, to really kind of put this mostly on his shoulders in terms of marketing and promotion of the movie and the awareness of the movie. But it's also rounded out by a really impressive cast of people you've probably seen before, like Mackenzie Davis and Scoot McNairy. But this is sort of a new take on that particular source material that they're adapting from a couple of years ago. But with all of that out the way, man, I will pass it to you. What do you think about this brand new psychological horror film, Speak No Evil?
I have never seen the original Speak No Evil, but I was definitely excited, I think, to get into this one because James McAvoy is him. Such a gem of an actor that we have working today, one of the best doing it. And I also do really like Mackenzie Davis, too. I think she is underrated. But again, really excited to get into this movie. I had to see this psychological thriller, and it was a very fun watch. I think this is a great theatrical experience if you have a ton of people in the theater with you. Like, there was a lot of visceral reactions, a lot of yelling, but in the right way. Again, you got to see with the right crowd, but our crowd was damn near perfect. We were reacting at the right time, saying things at the right time. And this movie really is about an American family. They're invited to spend the weekend with this charming British family that they met on vacation, and they pull up on them, and let's just say it becomes a psychological nightmare for them. But this film, I think, is what's so interesting about it is it has, I think, a lot of the tropes in that you expect, I think, out of a thriller like this. Like, what's the, not necessarily plot twist, but yeah, why is this so weird? Why are these people acting like this? What's going to happen? And I think the whole time, and I think it takes away from the movie a little bit for me too, but the whole time you're like, I know exactly what this is, and I know exactly, what's going on here. I think in a certain way, but it both takes away from it, and also lets you appreciate, okay, what's the journey going to be like? How are these characters going to react? What is going to happen here? And I think that was a lot of fun for me, is seeing how these families interact, and how Mackenzie Davis, or how the family that's kind of visiting the other farm is going to react. Mackenzie Davis and Scoot McNairy play husband and wife, and Scoot McNairy is, to me, like the worst character in the whole movie. He is useless, but I think it's something about that does speak to, what it does kind of talk about masculinity, and there is a little bit of satire between marital situations, and I don't know how you trust other people, and it is really interesting, I think, in those ways, even though I knew exactly what was going down the entire time. So yeah, it's not necessarily, I don't think this movie reinvents the wheel, but I think it does create a good enough of an environment for you to have fun, for you to watch a thriller with some really good acting, and for you, yeah, just to kind of sit back and turn your brain off for a little bit, and let the movie take you on a ride. So it's fine. I like it a lot. It was a fun watch, but and I seen a lot of the things coming, but man, I'm happy I watched it, and it was a fun watch.
Speak No Evil, it is a tremendous film to experience with other people, just because of the unpredictable nature of some of the things that go down here, and just some of the tension that's built up over the course of the runtime. But I was really interested in this film because James McAvoy, first and foremost, who doesn't act a ton lately. He's only done a few projects here and there, and hasn't acted a ton. So anytime he comes back, it feels like it's important to see. And knowing he was going to be the primary antagonist here was also a big selling point. And ultimately, this made me watch the original film because I wanted to see, like, okay, well, this movie just came out 2 years ago. What are the key differences and similarities? And ultimately, the Speak No Evil films, the 2022 Danish version and now this 2024 American version, the first two acts are almost identical. This brand new 2024 film lifts dialogue and scenes almost directly from the first two acts of the 2022 Danish film. The third act is completely different. It is so different, and it's a total 180 type of experience between what
Mm-hmm.
they did in the Danish film and what they do in this new film. I won't give anything away. I will just say that the Danish film is a lot more bleak. That's all I'll say, but that's not really a surprise considering it's an international film. Most of their films
Right.
are tough watches, and that's no exception. But this new movie, to see some of the things that they do differently than the Danish film, and some of the places that they go, or that are somewhat of a pivot from that first movie, it was interesting to me because even though certain scenes and certain dialogue are lifted directly from that first movie, what I enjoyed about this film is that they do add on a little bit more time to the overall runtime of the film because they can slowly build this tension, I think, in a more effective way in this new movie. The first one
Mm-hmm.
moves at a pretty steady clip. It's about 97 minutes. This movie's
Mm-hmm.
almost 2 hours. And so this one allows certain scenes to breathe a lot more, allow you to sort of really just take in the environment and what's happening here. But even more importantly, what this movie does do differently all throughout the runtime is some of the reasons why I do think that it might very well be superior to the Danish film. One is
Mm-hmm.
being the fact that they really examine cultural differences in this movie. They examine
Mm-hmm.
just like the idea that cultures save money differently, they spend money differently, they consider
Yeah.
certain material things to be of high priority as compared to maybe other cultures, and that becomes a very, very big talking point throughout multiple scenes in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
And then also just this whole idea of vacation friends and vacationing with strangers and people that you just met that you don't really know, because that has become somewhat of a trend lately. Like, we live in this world where things like Airbnb exist and you can go live in a shared apartment with a group of people who are renting out a room and you might not know them, and that happens frequently. People do that all the time. I've done it personally, and you have to think to yourself, like, you're kind of taking a risk. We live in this digital age where sometimes our guards are kind of let down because we have so much access to information and things. But things like Airbnb and Uber and all these digital services are becoming more prominent in films. You know, even in Barbarian, Airbnb was like a central sticking point to the first
Mm-hmm.
act of that movie. And Airbnb is not a part of this film at all, but just the idea of like packing up your things, going to meet up with the family that you just met. You kind of kicked it off with them. You know, there was good chemistry, but you don't really know anything about them. They're just inviting you to their house. And then all of a sudden you get there, and one by one, event after event, things happen, and you're like, oh, that's kind of strange. Well, that's a little bit
Mm-hmm.
weird, but you don't really trip off of it. And I think that the movie speaks to just our ability to kind of let things go for a long time, and how that can quickly just escalate to a point where you can't reverse that fortune. You can't really turn back because you've gotten so deep into this shit. Now you're in trouble. Now you have a problem that's in front of you, and that's exactly what this movie does. It talks about just how comfortable you can be with certain groups of people,
Mm-hmm.
and how you let your guard down so much that can be taken advantage of. And then you touched on this, but I love what they do with just the whole examination of toxic masculinity in general, and how they play upon that. Mackenzie Davis's character, she wears the pants in this relationship. She is the
For
one that's
sure.
kind of driving the car. Scoop McNairy is playing somewhat of an emasculated person because of
Mm-hmm.
not only just who he is personally, but also just because of what's happened to him in his relationship. The best relationship that he has is with his daughter, really. And I would say that I think he's the most interesting character in the entire movie, just because of all the different degrees and levels he has to go to. We don't typically see this, and it
Mm-hmm.
pays off, I think, really in the final act of the movie, because it doesn't go in conventional ways to what you think is going to happen. The man is not saving the day. That's just not the case here. And then his opposing foe on the other side of it is a freakishly swole, almost hulking James McAvoy, who is just ridiculously large in this movie, and he
It's
did it on
crazy.
purpose. He got jacked because he is a man's man. He's drinking beer. He's very aggressive. He's very sexual. He lets it all hang out. He doesn't have really any
Mm-hmm.
secrets. He's just like the ultimate idea of what a man is supposed to be. And they utilize that to their benefit for this entire movie. And I think all of that stuff just continues to build that tension throughout the course of the whole movie. And it even gets to a point where it's like, wow, we're still kind of in this tension building phase. Like, nothing has
Mm-hmm.
happened yet. Nothing is just like blown up, almost for the entire movie. And then something happens immediately, and it just completely flips the movie, and it becomes a completely different experience by the end of it. That final act,
For
as I
sure.
said, totally different than the 2022 Danish version, but it also becomes like a different movie entirely. It becomes sort of a cat and mouse thriller by the end of it, compared to what it was for the first, I don't know, 80 minutes of the film. And I
Mm-hmm.
enjoyed it. I thought it was a roller coaster ride. I thought it was really good. James McAvoy, incredible. Mackenzie Davis, really, really great. Scoot McNairy, also fantastic. And the kid
Yeah.
actors in this movie,
Oh,
loved
killed
them.
it.
Loved them
Mm-hmm.
what they did here. I thought that they were absolutely spectacular. They also had more to do in this movie than that 2022 Danish version. And I think that they use them
Mm.
really, really effectively to unpack their relationship and the discovery of things and just kind of how they influence all of the events that are going down here. So I think that this is definitely worth checking out. It's one of the more enjoyable thrillers that you're probably going to find this year. And it's kind of the latest addition into a long canon of movies that we're getting this year. We're getting a lot of movies with sickos this year, a lot of freakish shit. Strange Darling, Cuckoo.
Yeah.
Like, we're just getting
Yep.
movie after movie with a lot of sickos in them.
A lot of sickos.
And so I appreciate that we're kind of going in a different direction. We're not just doing traditional religious horror movies. We're getting those still and slashers, but we're kind of examining people with problems, people with weird shit going on up inside their head. And so this was a fun watch ultimately. But folks, those are all of our thoughts on the brand new psychological horror film Speak No Evil. If you've checked this out, definitely hit us up and let us know what you think.